banning kids from social media seems to be all the rage among leaders in British Commonwealth countries at the moment. Seems to be the latest thing. They're all into it. They're all doing it.
This is going to get ugly.
So Mark Carney's Liberal government in Canada announced a few days ago that they were going to enact a social media ban for kids under 16. A few days after that, Keir Starmer's government in the UK announced the exact same thing, a social media ban for kids under 16. And 6 months ago, Australia put into effect a social media ban for kids under 16. It's all an incredible coincidence. In Canada, when this sort of thing happens, the reaction tends to be as if these are sort of unique, one-of-a-kind events, right? There's no context for them. They just sort of pop out of nowhere. And so the criticism of them tends to be sort of superficial, quite superficial, and repetitive, and it misses the bigger picture, the bigger point, the real problem completely. In fact, in this situation, there is basically one criticism. There's one criticism that everybody repeats, and everyone acts like they thought of it themselves and that they're doing everybody a favor for saying this exact same criticism over and over and over again. This is mainly from conservatives, not exclusively, but mainly, right? So that criticism is something like the social media ban for kids is a threat to our democracy because it's really smuggling in the requirement for everyone to have to show ID in order to access the internet. And the obvious, easiest way to do that is with a digital ID, and this will lead to more control and more censorship and more control of free speech, et cetera, right? This is the one single criticism that you will see universally, as if it's the only thing to take away from this, right? You'll see it in Canada. Wake the hell up, Canada. Bill C-34 will usher everyone into a digital ID. It's a Trojan horse. You will see the same criticism in the UK. It was never about safeguarding the kids. This is a smokescreen for government-controlled digital ID via social media access applicable to all. And you'll see the same criticism in Australia. You're banning social media for under 16s, so everybody has to verify their age and identity, enabling you to impose digital ID under the guise of keeping children safe. And here's the thing. I agree with that. That's what I think's happening too. I think that's the ultimate purpose of this kind of policy. The problem is that it's superficial. The analysis is superficial. It's the most obvious thing. It's what everyone else is saying, right? It's what's right in front of our faces right now. But ultimately, this is a symptom of something else. It's a symptom of a greater underlying malignancy that isn't being spotted, it isn't being identified, it isn't being talked about because everyone is focused on this context-free event that's just occurred. So your problem is not that legislation like Bill C-34 is a threat to your democracy. Your problem is that legislation like Bill C-34 proves you don't have a democracy. Not sometime in the future, but right now in Canada, no democracy. That's not our system of government. Right, what we have is something like a soft dictatorship. We have a ruling class who decide what's in their self-interest. They announce that they're imposing it on Canadians, and they tell us it's in our best interest, and everyone acts like that's how the system is supposed to work. right? They complain about it and stuff, but nobody asks the question, where was the great demand from the Canadian public that the government adopt these new powers for themselves? Nobody asked that. There's criticism. There's lots of criticism, but the criticism is directed at the policy. It's criticism of the policy, or it's criticism of the party, or it's criticism of the politician, like it's Mark Carney's fault, right? It's never big picture, right? It's only this extremely narrow focused criticism of the event that's happening. So it's the view from within the system of what is being generated by the system. It's never a step back to look at the system itself, like that concept of taking the view from 10,000 feet, right? So the Cambridge Dictionary definition of taking the view from 10,000 feet is this. The view from 10,000 feet, or 10,000-foot view, is an idiom that means a broad, high-level overview of a situation. So in other words, to take the view from 10,000 feet is to take in the entire landscape, in contrast to the view from ground level, where you fixate on whatever you're looking at that's right in front of your face in the moment. And if we apply that to this situation, the view from ground level of Bill C-34 it's a threat to our democracy. The view from 10,000 feet is a system that would produce Bill C-34 isn't a democracy. And that's the thing that nobody wants to acknowledge. Nobody wants to say that out loud, least of all Canadian journalists. And that's because Canadian journalists are part of the system that they pretend to critique and to hold to account. And I think it'd be even more accurate to say that Canadian journalists won't say that we don't live in a democracy because they can't see it either. They can't get out of the system. They can't step back from the system and see it from the outside and to assess it as a system and to see its nature. Because they're like everybody else. They've been conditioned to see with the system as opposed to look at it. It's like that other idiom of the fish in the fishbowl who can't perceive water because he's spent his whole life immersed in it. It's the same thing with the system that we live in our countries. And it's the same for most Canadians. They can't take that step back out of the system. They don't know that that's even an option in the system, outside of the system. And if they could do it, they wouldn't want to, because it's disturbing. I don't think most Canadians could comprehend or conceive that they don't live in a democracy. They just would not believe it. It can't possibly be true that we don't live in a democracy. That Canada isn't a democracy. It's something else. There's something else going on here, even though it's right in front of them. It's right in front of them that nobody asks for these things that are imposed on us. They're just imposed on us, and Canadians act like that's how this is supposed to work. And if we don't like it, we'll just vote for someone else who will impose something else on us. But I think, we have to be honest and adult about this, and just let's look at the system in which we live and be honest. Does that look like a democracy? Does the government telling us they're banning your kids from the internet look like a liberal democracy in which the political class represents the will of Canadians? You cannot answer that question honestly and not answer no.
This is going to get ugly. Doesn't mean it's